Okay, now we're going to be looking at reflections and doing a little bit of investigating with them. So this question says to reflect the figure on the x-axis. So what you have to imagine is there's like a mirror here. So, oops, I didn't draw that very straight. So pretend like this line here, this red line, is a mirror. And you're going to flip the image around that mirror. So this point here, so this n value here, it was 3 units above that mirror line. It's now going to be 3 units below the mirror line. So the new n, or n prime, is going to be there. The m was 1 unit above. It's now going to be 1 unit below. So we're flipping it. The L, this is an interesting one because it was actually right on the mirror. It's going to stay there. So anything that's right on the mirror doesn't move. So the L prime is going to go right there. The K was 3 above. It's now going to be 1, 2, 3 below. Oops. So my new shape is going to look like this. So that's what the mirror image looks like. In terms of tracking the new coordinates, the K prime is now -2, -3. The L prime, it actually doesn't stay the same. It's -1, 0. Sorry, it does stay the same. The M prime is now 4, -1. And the N prime is 2, -3. Oops. And the questions ask you, what's happening to the X? So you'll notice when I flipped here, I didn't move left or right. I just flipped it from the top to the bottom. So nothing happened to the X. What happened to the Y? Okay, so I flipped from the top to the bottom. So the Y up here, this was 2, +3. Sorry, the N was 2, +3. It's now 2, -3. The M was 4, +1. It's now 4, -1. The K was -2, +3. It's now -2, -3. So it's the opposite. If it was positive, it's now negative. If it was negative, it's now positive. We can show that by saying -y. It's the opposite. So let's see if that holds true here. Again, we're going to reflect it on the x-axis. Picture the mirror here. So the O was 4 units up. It's now going to be 4 units down. There's my O prime. The R was 2 up. It's now 2 down. The S was 2 up. It's now 2 down. And the P was 4 up. It's now 4 down. And my new shape is here. Again, it's like a mirror, or we flipped it. So again, let's track the P prime, -2, -4. The Q prime, 3, -4. The R prime is 1, -2. And the S prime is -4, -2. Again, what's happening to the X? We didn't move left or right. Nothing's happening. What's happening to the Y? We went from being above the red line to below the red line. So now we did the opposite. The original P was -2, +4. It's now -2, -4. Likewise, we didn't do one like this, but if there was one below and we went above, it would go from negative to positive. So the opposite, again, we write it like this. Okay, so what about the y-axis? So now picture, here's your mirror line. Same idea, but we're now going to flip left to right. So the E was 4 away from the blue line. It's still going to be 4 away, just on the other side. The F was right on the line. It's going to stay right on the line. So the F prime is going to stay there. The G, now this one's interesting. It was on the right of the line. It's now going to be on the left of the line. And the H was 5 to the left. It's now going to be 5 to the right. And our new shape is going to be here. Now, this also kind of looks like a translation, but be careful, because if it was a translation, the H would move to here and the G would move to here. So be careful, because it isn't. So that's how you know it's not a translation, because the H actually flipped all the way to that side. If it translated, it would move over. So the H would always be on the left of the G. Notice here, they flip-flopped. That's a sign that it's a a reflection. So be careful because they look very similar. So my E prime is now at 4, positive 1. My F prime, that one didn't change because it was right on the mirror line. My G prime is now -1, -1. And my H prime is now 5, -1. Now again, when we look at the x's, now be careful here, our x's do change, right? We were here, we were at -5 for the H, we're now at +5. Or we were at -4 for the E, we're now at +4. Or our G was +1, we're now -1. Our x is now the opposite, or that's the way we show it mathematically. What about the y? Nothing changes. We did not move anything up or down. We just flipped left to right. So again, let's look at this one. Again, we're reflecting it on the y-axis, so that's the mirror line there. So this D was 5 to the left of the line, it's now 5 to the right of the line. This C was 1 to the left, it's now 1 to the right. This B was 1 to the left, it's now 1 to the right. And the A was 5 to the left, it's now 5 to the right. Again, this looks a lot like a translation. It's not, because if it was a translation, the A would move here and the B would move here. The A would be before the B. We've flipped it all the way over. So again, there's a little way that you can tell that it's not a translation. All right, so let's track what's happening. Our A prime is 5, -4. Our B prime is 1, -4. Our C prime is 1, -2. And our D prime is 5, -2. So if we look at what's happening with the x value, so we went from an x value of -5 to an x value of +5, or an x value of -1 to an x value of +1. That is the opposite. Again, the way we can say that mathematically is -x. The y, nothing happened. It did not change. Okay? So notice when we reflected on the x-axis, the x did not change. Ooh. X reflection, x doesn't change. The y changes. That's a little bit confusing, so get that straight. A reflection on the x causes the y to change. A reflection on the y causes the x to change. And the way that it changes is it always is the opposite value. Now, this is for on the x or y axis. It's slightly different if there's different lines of reflection. For our purposes, we're just looking at the x and y axis, but you can have other lines of reflection. So here, if you're reflecting on the x-axis, again, in your brain, think, reflecting on the x-axis, my x does not change. Oops. So I just write x in there. That just means it does not change. What changes is the y. It's the opposite. When I reflect on the y-axis, my brain has to go, reflecting on the y stays the same. It's the x that's the opposite, and I write that by -x. So that is what's happening with reflections.